Are there any further questions? No, thank you. So that's the end of public question time. Councillor Williams, did you have...
My question is that I'd like to give 1 minute's notice for our late Northcote seat person of Fiona Richardson, as she was a trailblazer here, not in Northcote, for all women regarding to the fight for the Royal Commission into family violence, and I think that it's only important that we honour her at 1 minute's silence here in the chambers, if everybody would be...
If anyone would like to stand, we'll observe a minute's silence. Violet Fiona Richardson. Moving now to item 6, consideration of reports. 6.1, draft 2016-17 financial statements and performance statement. Thank you. Moved by Councillor Amir and seconded by Councillor Greco. Councillor Amir, would you like to speak to the motion?
Sure. So for the year ended June 2017, Council achieved an operating surplus of $21.63 million, which was $11.2 million ahead of the annual budget. The higher surplus reflects the early received 50% of the 2017-18 Victorian Grants Commission funding and various other changes to costs. Council spent $31.43 million on capital works in the last year, which was less than the annual budget. Some of that work has moved into the new year, carrying forward $11.3 million in capital works. Some of the highlights of the current budget, as we mentioned earlier at the adoption of the budget, is $6 million for walking and cycling initiatives, which is our biggest ever investment, $1.4 million for the replacement of synthetic pitches at the Darebin International Sports Stadium, $1.3 million for the inner city netball program, $1.1 million for stormwater harvesting and flood mitigation works, which was a big priority for us, especially seeing the impacts of the flooding in December last year. Council's cash and investment position at the end of June was a positive bank balance of $74.88 million, which was $27.96 million ahead of budget, so we're in a very healthy financial state. This result reflects the better than budgeted operating surplus and the funding for the capital works carried forward. Finally, in relation to the performance statement, of the 28 indicators audited by the Victorian Auditor General, 17 were exceeded or improved in comparison to the results of the previous year. So thank you very much to the team who've been working hard on this.
Thank you, Councillor Amir. Councillor Greco?
Thank you, Mayor. I think Councillor Amir has covered most of the numbers in relation to our financial statement. It's a very positive both profit and loss statement and balance sheet. We're a council that's very financially stable. As it was mentioned, there's a surplus of over $21 million, and which is quite substantially above what was projected, and we projected $10 million, so we've almost doubled that surplus. And it'll be interesting to note why we doubled that surplus. Part of it was obviously extra revenue that came into the organisation, but also nearly $4 million worth of cost savings in relation to the budget, so that we were able to reduce costs by about $4 million, which delivered us an additional surplus. The other thing that I think is worth mentioning in relation to this budget is that Council has no debts at the moment, which actually puts us on a very solid financial footing, given that the city needs a lot of work in relation to capital works programs. in terms of rebuilding the city, given that many of our assets are reaching their use-by date. So it puts us in a very good financial position to approach that and to borrow into the future for some major capital works. The other thing I would say is that in relation to our capital budget, we spent about 30 million this year. I know that in our current budget, we've projected that to be much higher, again, in light of our need to actually spend more on infrastructure. And so that's something that we need to slightly improve on. And finally, I'd like just to say that the budget's been cleared by the Audit Committee. Now the next step of it will be go to the Victorian Auditor General
10 seconds.
in order to be ticked off. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Greco. Councillor Min.
Madam Mayor, I just wanted to finalise the recommendation. There's spaces to authorise specific councillors to sign the financial statements, and I propose that yourself, Mayor Kim Lassurf, and Deputy Mayor Gaetano Greco to be the councillors to sign the financial statements and to also sign the performance statements.
Thank you. Is that okay, Councillor Moreira? Yep, thank you. Are there any further speakers? If not, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? That motion's carried. Item 6.2, Urban Design Framework 2015 St George's Road and Plenty Road Corridors, Showers Street Addendum. Now we have a number of people who have registered to make a submission to this item. So I'll call first Lisa Oakley. We'll just get to the microphone.
My name's Lisa. I reside at 46 Shower Street in Preston, and I guess I just want to start by thanking Council for tabling this issue and for the work that's been done to date in trying to establish appropriate planning controls for our street that we've been fighting for the last 4 years. I have read the proposed addendum to the Urban Design Framework, and I guess I still have quite a few concerns with that I wanted to raise tonight. And the biggest
So that's now time. Is there one last question or statement you would like to make?
houses.
Thank you. Thank you for your submission. The next person I have, yes, is Debbie Platanis.
Yeah.
The next person registered to make a submission is Jacinta Carabello. Okay. The next person registered to speak is David Lenardi.
Good evening. I'm the owner of 47 Charles Street. I've come here tonight just to ask that any addendum for adoption be put on hold, if possible. At no time with council about what is going in this addendum. It obviously affects myself and my property greatly, so all I'm asking for is for a bit of time to consult with council to see what actually is being. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. The next person is Adrian Boutsakis.
How's it going? Pretty much similar concerns to most people in the Showers area, that I just think we haven't had enough time to table submissions and discuss the controls and so forth. I think everyone sort of appreciates that, and whether it's a postponement or we can have a meeting or something where we can sit with the council planning officials as soon as possible. Thanks.
Thank you. And the last person I have is Jordan McInnes.
This proposal on Saturday, indirectly, and I haven't been consulted at all, knew nothing about it, so that's my main concern, need time to be consulted and find out the details. Thank you.
Thank you. Just, I guess, a point of clarification or a question from me to the officers because of what some of the submissions have raised. I note that in the report there were 2 community consultation meetings. Could you give us a little bit more information about those meetings and how we notified the residents of Showers Street?
Thank you, Mayor. So this issue has been one that's been ongoing, as you've heard from the speakers tonight. We have sent a number of letters out to the community this year, and we haven't taken on, I suppose, the design guidelines that we prepared as part of the drafts lightly. The first letter we sent out was dated the 10th of March and was an invitation to the first workshop. The first workshop was held on Tuesday the 21st of March 2017, where a number of residents did attend. A letter dated the 16th of May was attached to all residents of Showers Street with meeting minutes from that particular meeting. A letter dated the 6th of June was then sent out to all residents inviting them to workshop number 2. Workshop number 2 was held on Wednesday the 14th of June in 2017. And again, a number of residents and councillors were in attendance. A letter dated the 23rd of June was then sent out to all residents, which sought to provide the minutes for workshop number 2 and the next steps. And finally, a letter dated the 24th of August was sent to all residents notifying them of the fact that these draft guidelines were going to be tabled to council for adoption.
Thank you.
Could I say something about this? I rent out property.
So I've let you to ask that question. I guess my follow-up question is, was it just sent to the residents of the street, or was it sent to also the ratepayer of the properties?
Owners and occupiers.
Oh, so both owners and occupiers. Yeah. Okay. Thanks. Councillors. Councillor Greco.
I just wanted to know through you, Mayor, whether there are any impediments or time constraints on us adopting this here tonight, or in light of if we were to defer it,
yes.
In order to get further information, particularly representations from the residents that have spoken here tonight. So I just want to get an answer on that.
Yeah, sure.
To actually inform my vote.
Thank you, Councillor Greco. The reason for putting this draft addendum to council and have it adopted is so that in the interim, until we're able to go through a full planning scheme amendment to put in place planning policies implemented in the planning scheme, which have since been admitted, we have sought to get a council adopted position which will assist in all decision makers, whether they are council under delegation or VCAT at the tribunal, that there is at least an understanding for those decision makers as to what the vision council has for this particular street. These are certainly draft guidelines at this stage. They're not finalised. There'll be changes. We've already picked up a few little words that we'd like to change when we go through the full planning scheme amendment, but it really just gives the tribunal, I guess, an understanding. Now, the reason for that is because we had a previous application at 40 Shower Street where the tribunal members basically said that due to the omissions to certain planning policies in the planning scheme, that there was very limited mechanism for them to make a decision based on the planning policies. So we've put these draft guidelines as an addendum so it doesn't impact on the integrity of the overall draft of the overall St George's Road and Plenty Road urban design guidelines, which council officers have worked extremely hard on preparing over the last 5 years. It will go through a full planning scheme amendment process and it will have full consultation process with, again, all the residents and surrounding landowners in the future. So there is a VCAT hearing which is coming up in 16th of September. And look, the tribunal might decide not to give any weight to these urban design guidelines. They might decide to give it a little bit of weight. At least it gives them, I guess, an understanding about the vision for the street.
Councillor McCarthy.
Just a related question. Just in the absence of these design guidelines being passed this evening, if that were to be the case, am I correct in understanding that the substantive controls under the St George's Road plans, which have been approved by the Minister, would in fact then be considered by VCAT as the standing controls, and that they actually allow for greater heights than are currently allowed for, and less protection of amenity than what is described here?
Yeah. So the heights, so as I said before, in order to maintain the integrity of the urban design framework, which has been adopted last council meeting by yourselves, we have put this as an addendum and we haven't changed any of the heights. So in response to one of the questions earlier with regard to height, when we did meet with the community, we did say that height was something we were going to review as part of the full planning scheme amendment process. If we were to just change the heights, then what's already been approved by the Minister, which is 6 stories on one side and 4 stories on the other, then we would seriously be questioning, I guess, the integrity of the plan that we had. There could be questions about whether or not other things have been changed within the UDF itself. How do we know what has been changed and what hasn't through the adoption of the UDF? So we've made it extremely separate from the broader UDF, and if it's not adopted tonight, then VCAT will be making a decision on the residential growth zone and the design and development overlay Schedule 16, which basically provides very little guidance for the future development of Shower Street.
Thank you. Councillor McCarthy.
Just a related process question then, and I just want to pick up on a comment that our officer made about what follows from here. If I'm correct, if we are to adopt this evening, anyone who has an issue with what is both here and also in the substantive controls can make their case both in the consultation that would follow, but also in the planning scheme amendment process at 2-panel. Yep. So this is not the final decision, but this is an interim holding point to give guidance around current applications.
Yeah, that's correct, Councillor McCarthy. If this is adopted by Council, we'll take that, I guess, as Council's position that they do want to seek further controls for Shower Street itself, and we will review potentially design and development overlays, other aspects that provide design guidelines for larger scale developments. We'll also be looking at the heights. That will be a full planning scheme amendment process, which will go through consultation and ministerial approval at the end of it. So this is just a very first step, and it just gives decision makers an ability to make a decision based on a vision, I suppose.
Thank you. Councillors?
I'm happy to move the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Amir.
Happy to second it.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Councillor Amir, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yeah. So this is a very challenging and unusual situation. As you've heard, this is something that's been ongoing for many months, and it started before my time on council. Shower Street is not like the other streets around it. It is a very quiet street with intact houses, a very close community, and as you've heard, residents who really love living there and live there for that streetscape and close community. So as councillors, or as for myself, I would like to be able to protect that street as much as I can. However, we are limited by our legislative obligations. We have a number of levers that we can use, and this is time critical because of the upcoming VCAT hearing. So, as you've heard, we do need to give guidance. So I recognise that this amendment is not ideal for either party, but I believe that going forward in this way is better than leaving it up to VCAT, who historically is more permissive about development than council, and recognising that this is not the end of the line. This is just one, it's a bit of blue tack perhaps, not blue tack, what's the word, sticky tape, band-aid, whatever it might be, just to sort of try to put something small in place while we undertake the larger changes. We can't go against the planning decisions that have already been made. We can't override the minister, but we can do whatever we have been doing and continue to do to protect the integrity of the street.
Thank you. Councillor Williams?
The new planning controls approved by the Minister Planning as part of the amendment C136 for Shower Street was actually DDO 16 and RGZ1. Council, landowners and residents of Shower Street have really expressed their concerns of what has actually been approved. So what we're doing here tonight, as my fellow councillors mentioned, it's like a band-aid, it's like a guideline just for now until we put something more hard and concrete. So anything that does come up into planning, as in any application that comes to council, will have a better guideline, and also it will help VCAT give them a better guideline than what's actually existing at this point in time. So what I suggest, I think this is probably a great way going forward for now, so allows that little bit more control for Shower Street, especially to give that protection for any new applications and one that's already existing at VCAT at this point in time, until hopefully in the next few months, our planning department will send out some new letters, and then we can have that open forum together with our residents, with council, and then we can have a further discussion on what we can do to give better controls for Shower Street.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Are there any further speakers? If not, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? That motion is carried. Moving now to item 6.3. Proposed road discontinuance adjoining 2 and 4 Combi Street and 13 South Street.
Happy to move.
Weston. Thank you. Moved by Councillor Williams. Seconded by Councillor Amir. Councillor Williams.
This is just a normal, straightforward statutory procedure where we have the discontinue of land on adjoining to 2 and 4 Combi and 13 South Street, Preston. We've had no submissions received. What we will do, we'll just do the discontinue in accordance to the section of 206 to the Local Government Act of 1989. A notice will be published in the Local Government Gazette and local papers, and also on the council website. The road will be sold to the private treaty by the owners of the adjoining properties, and there's been no other issues regarding their property in reference to the Yarravalla water regarding sewers and drains and pipes. So it's pretty straightforward.
Thank you. Councillor Amir, do you have anything to add?
Nothing further to add.
Thank you. I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? Motion's carried. Item 6.4, proposed road discontinuance adjoining 3 to 13 Tracy Street and 54 to 56 Elliott Street, Reservoir.
Happy to move.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Newton and seconded by Councillor Greco. Councillor Newton.
Thank you, Meliseph. This one's very similar to the last one. It's basically just commencing a statutory procedure. This is about discontinuing the road adjoining 3 to 13 Tracy Street and 54 and 56 Elliott Street. It's been used by the Mayflower Group for some time. They're looking to do a proposed redevelopment of the existing 38-bed nursing home and independent living units on the site, and the road hasn't been used as a road for some time, so I see this as quite straightforward.
Thank you. Councillor Greco.
Thank you, Bill. The only other thing I would add is that, as with all these processes, it's been advertised in the local leader, and most importantly, there's been no submissions have been received in order to objecting to us proceeding down this path.
Thank you. Any further speakers? I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Moving now to item 7, which is consideration of responses to petitions, notices of motion and general business. 7.1, Oakover Road Slip Lane Review. Now there are 2 submissions to this item. I'll call first on Anne Laver. We'll just pass you the microphone.
Yeah. Firstly, I'd like to complain that the submissions that we've made to the urban designer weren't included, and I don't know why that happened. There were several submissions made in the agenda, but I haven't heard them either, like from Chris and a few other people. It was in the agenda online. Did you see that?
No.
No, there were several, but ours wasn't. We made 2 separate ones, another person and myself, and they weren't included.
2 submissions to this consultation process for the Oakover Road.
Yes, that's right.
We can follow that up to see what's happened there.
Okay, so I'm doing it now.
Yep.
Okay, so I'd like to say that I believe that slip lane closure and the questions that were made about the whole consultation have been incorrectly aligned with the question as to whether people want more green spaces. Naturally, people want more green spaces. That's given. But the proposed design is simply a concrete, unsheltered space on a dangerous corner, and it doesn't in any way make the corner less dangerous. If it had a proper green space in another location, then that would be great. But this doesn't make it less dangerous having a concrete area just there. In addition, there's only 3 trees that are expected to be planted, one of which they can't put in anyway because it's a Telstra pit which can't be moved. And also, we haven't seen the report from the engineer whether it's even possible that the proposed changes. So, and I've been told by the emergency services that they can't get down the street. So, because it needs to be 15.2 metres, I think it is. has to be wide and they can't get down there. So it's a real concern for them. And a lot of people are against this. The pop-up park that was there before was a disaster. There was, what was that, 150,000 or something like that? So this is just a permanent pop-up park and just a replacement of that. I just think there should be a better solution thought of for a very dangerous corner. I agree it's dangerous, and a pedestrian crossing and for access for cyclists would be good, but I just think this is a really bad design and solution. Thank you.
Thank you. The second submission is from Nikki Passaportis, who isn't joining us this evening, so I'll read it out on her behalf. We have seen item 7.1 of the council meeting will be addressing the planning going forward of the Oakover Road slip lane. We have also noted that there is a recommendation under option 1 to permanently close the slip lane and convert it into a public open space with trees and a respite area for pedestrians. We have been involved in this project for a long time, since we volunteered to water the trees in the pop-up park and then canvassed the neighbourhood to find out what local residents wanted in terms of the use of the space. They twice canvassed the junction area, firstly to ask for the slip lane to remain closed after the pop-up park was removed, and secondly to ask for option 1 as contained in the Transforming Your Junction precinct pamphlet. On both occasions, local residents and shop owners signed wholeheartedly in support, and there was not one person who said they were unhappy with the proposal. We could have got many more signatures, but simply ran out of time because we took pains to go through the plans and talk about it with each signatory. We concentrated more on the business people rather than local residents, as many of our neighbours attended the community consultations and signed online, but I can state unhesitantly that without exception the shop and cafe proprietors are hugely in favour of more pedestrian traffic along High Street, as it means more people frequenting their premises, as well as making the entire area more pleasant to live and work in. This being so, we fully support option 1, as we believe it is totally consistent with the JUMP commitment to creating a more livable public space. We are very appreciative of the way this section of High Street has recently been upgraded with the planting of trees, the median strip works and safer crossing points for pedestrians, and we feel that this theme will be greatly enhanced by option 1. We hope that the councillors of Darra will endorse option 1 of the report and make the closure of the Oakover Road slip lane permanent and its transformation into a pleasant public space a reality. So that's all of the submissions. Councillors?
I'm happy to move the recommendation.
Happy to second.
Moved by Councillor Amir and seconded by Councillor Williams. Councillor Amir.
So this is a proposal for the redevelopment on the corner of Oakover Road and High Street. It is an issue that has got a lot of community interest, and even last year I received emails both for and against the proposal. I believe that the vision originally came from Councillor Bowley, who was councillor for this ward under the last council. And because of these mixed views, to be honest, I wasn't sure, sort of in the months leading up to this decision, whether it was something I would support. But then I went along to the community consultation on site a few weeks ago and spoke to a lot of local residents at that consultation. And following those conversations, I've decided to support this for 3 reasons. So firstly, overwhelmingly, not 100%, but as a general trend, people who lived nearby, near the area, supported this change. It is a very bleak corner, to be frank. It's quite glary. In summer, it's very hot, and it's not necessarily a nice place to stand or walk past. Again, as a generalisation, the people who oppose the closure of the slip lane are people who use Oakover Road as a thoroughfare to travel by car. So they're going up to High Street and want to cut through to St George's Road, or going down St George's Road and want to cut through High Street. And this isn't exactly consistent with the kind of environment we're aiming to create for this area. So Oakover Road is going to be an area of increased density. There's going to be a lot of people. You have for example, kids going to school along Oakover Road to Bell Primary. I don't think we should be making decisions that encourage car traffic along Oakover Road. We want to be encouraging decisions that encourage, making decisions that encourage people to travel by bike and to walk around in their local area. Secondly, this change is consistent with the Junction Urban Master Plan, and the staff have done a lot of work around this, including quite extensive consultation, and this is the recommendation that they've put forward that is consistent with the plan. Thirdly, part of my hesitation originally around this site was I thought, you know, we have so many beautiful parks in Darebin, and at that corner there are other places people can go if they want to kick a football around or sit under a tree and read a book. So I thought, why would someone want to sit and read a book there? But this isn't necessarily somewhere that people are going to go as a destination. It's something that they can see as they walk past, going to Cedars, going to the new Gertrude Contemporary Art Gallery, and, you know, maybe have a bit of a break, have a drink while they wait for their friend. And something that can turn what's currently a bit of a concrete jungle, something that is quite bleak and grey, into something that's a bit nicer to liven up the area and make residents just that little bit happier when they're walking past each day. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Amir. Councillor Williams.
I'm happy to endorse the recommendation, which is to close the slip lane off permanently. I do agree with my fellow residents in the gallery regarding it is a dangerous spot. I'd like to have that area obviously slowed down. I can't see it being a pop-up area for play space. It's possibly something maybe later down the track when the junction is probably more lifted up in that area and done up a bit more, that maybe that's something we can look down the track. But at this point in time, I can't see anything there at this point in time that I would say considered to be safe. Maybe we might put a bit of greenery or something like that there, but I would not personally think that having people sitting there on the corner would certainly not make me feel comfortable when I turn into Ogover Road, where I'm turning left or turning right into that street. So at this point in time, I'm happy for the slip lane to be closed, and hopefully in the near future that we can maybe beautify it, but I can't see, as I said, at this point in time to have those works.
Thank you, Councillor
right
Williams.
now.
Thanks. Any further speakers? Councillor Newton.
Thank you, Melissa. So just briefly, I want to speak in support of the recommendation. I think I agree with Steph or Councillor Amir that, and it's a really changing area as well. There's a lot of new developments there, and I think, you know, I go to Cedars regularly. I know there's all sorts of things popping up there, like the Benzina garage, for example. And I think this will add to it. I think having, you know, just a little bit more green, a few trees there, I think will really liven it up, and I think will make it more pedestrian friendly. And I think as we see how good it is in Thornbury, I think this will be a big part of just shifting that a little bit further north, and I think it's a very exciting thing to be happening.
Thank you. Councillor McCarthy.
I just wanted to encourage those people that are opposed to this because not because of they want to drive through Oakover Road, but because they don't believe in the potential here. And I think that's really what this is about. It's about future potential. It's about safeguarding the future here. I would encourage them to have a look at the work of Jeanette Sadiq Khan in New York City, who was the Transport Commissioner there, who did something very similar, which was change the road orientation in a particular section of New York City. And by doing so, created a whole lot of new pedestrian space. And by doing so, she not only transformed the way that people engaged in that particular strip in their city, right in the heart of their city, and there was no change to the traffic volumes because cars previously couldn't get through any faster anyway. They were a bottleneck because of traffic congestion. But what in fact happened was that all the businesses along this particular stretch in New York City actually were regenerated. And they were regenerated because private enterprise saw the opportunity from having a greater pedestrian precinct, changed what they were offering, and suddenly you created a whole lot new amenity, which was funded not by council or by the New York City government there, but by the private sector. Now, I think I would encourage anyone who hasn't had a look to look at the actual document here in the agenda on page 29 and have a look at the car park that sits directly behind the Oakover Road slip lane. There is a fantastic aerial shot. There is a venue and a function space there just behind. You have what could potentially in the future become a public park if that particular venue decided to be a bit entrepreneurial. They've got a whole lot of car parks there, but why not transform that whole section behind into a green space during the day?
10 seconds.
There's a thriving business there. And it would also be a great public space. We see that in other places, and a little bit of future thinking would go a long way to improving the amenity, but also would be great, creating a great local business opportunity as well.
Thank you, Councillor McCarthy. Councillor Greco.
Just very quickly, look, I'll be supporting this particular recommendation of report. The only point that I would make is that if you look at the streetscape of High Street in that particular section, it has changed. We have invested a lot of money. We've put islands down the middle, and the whole feel and nature of that particular strip has changed. The slip lane that was there previously, that was developed when High Street was a 60-kilometre zone, and people used it as a fast-moving thoroughfare for cars. At the moment, it's not that. Definitely, the slip lane needs to be closed, and in order for that particular corner there to complement the rest of the work that's occurring further up. The point that really remains is that how that particular spot there is beautified. I think the plans that are in here are a great step, and if need be, we would need to continuously look at that because it's a prime area, and that we would need to ensure that whatever that we put there actually can is for the benefit of the community, but actually helps to beautify the area and keep it in line with the other developments that are occurring there.
Thank you, Councillor Greco. That's everybody. So I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Item 8 is notices of motion. There are none. Item 9, urgent business. Councillor Greco.
I have an urgent business item that I'd like to...
Yep, we'll pop it up on screen and move a motion to accept it into the agenda.
Happy to second it.
So Councillor Greco moved the motion to accept onto the agenda, and seconded by Councillor McCarthy. All those in favour? The motion is carried.
May I like to move this particular motion?
Thank you, Councillor Greco. And so,
I'm happy for someone else to second. We just need to change 6 months.
yeah, no, we're on to it.
I'll be the second.
Seconded by Councillor Newman. Councillor Greco, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor, for accepting this as an urgent motion. As we all know, sometime last week, the government announced, out of surprise, out of the blue, that they would introduce a new visa. And what this visa is that it's called a final departure bridging visa. And what this visa basically does is that it strips away entitlements and rights to particular asylum seekers who happen to find themselves here in Australia because of medical reasons, where they've been transferred either from Nauru or from Manus Island to Australia, to Australian mainland, to undergo operations or urgent medical attention. So what the government has done, out of surprise, has actually stripped away their rights. Particular rights that they're stripped away is the income support. They'll get about $200 a week to be supported, and also has said that from the 28th of August that they would actually they're given 3 weeks to actually vacate the accommodation that was being provided to them by the government. So this is a really, if you like, it's a really cruel state of affairs where a minister just out of the hat plucks out some new rules that actually play with people's lives. And I think that given the legacy of Darebin, and given that Darebin has actually assisted a lot of asylum seekers and refugees, even in a material way over the years, I think we really need to take a stand and respond to this. I've noticed in the last week in the media that there's been a lot of opposition to this, and not from the usual quarters. We've even seen even the Labor Party, the opposition leader, actually asking questions about the cruelty of such actions on the part of the government. So what the motion then talks about is that we need to write to the minister, to the Prime Minister, and also particularly to the Minister for Immigration and Border Protection, to demand that this that this particular policy is not being implemented. And also in particular, I'd like to draw Council's attention to the 2 action items there, at the action item 5 and action item 6, where Darebin Council commits to a relief effort in the event, because we understand the first ones are to cap, there'll be about 100 asylum seekers that will be affected. And as a little side note, most of them are in Victoria and New South Wales, so we can expect many of them to actually be here in Darebin. And it can eventually affect up to 400 people across the country. And the last point there, and I see that there are two members of DEC, both the President of DEC and also the Deputy Chair of DEC, about engaging with relevant networks to support sector coordination in the delivery of such relief and support service. So I understand that DEC has been consulted in actually helping out with other organisations to provide relief where we can.
Thank you, Councillor Greco. Councillor Newton.
Can I ask a question?
Yep.
So I just have a question about whether items 2, 3 and 4 are a subsection of item 1 relating to the letter to Minister and Prime Minister, or whether items 2, 3 and 4 are intended for action by Council. So,
Councillor Greco?
Yeah.
So should items 2, 3 and 4 move as subsections?
2, 3 and 4 are just broad statements, statements of...
Would you like those points to be made in the letter, I think, is Councillor New?
By staying in their separate points, I think they'll be taken up in the letter.
I just feel a little bit nervous that particularly, I mean, it's challenging to understand how our role as council relates to...
Sorry, is there a question or a proposed amendment?
Not sure yet.
Would we like to hear from this?
I'd like to make a proposed amendment that those 3 points become part of our stance that we're expressing to the Prime Minister and the Minister for Immigration. They can be dot points, under points.
So, Councillor Greco, do you...
It helps to clarify for Councillor, not a problem.
Yep, so 2, 3 and 4 have now become 1A, 1B, 1C?
Yeah.
Yep. Councillor Newton, is that okay?
Yes.
Thank you.
I also have a question.
Yes.
Just to the mover, in reference to the way we will support here in Darebin, will that be like allowing them to have library cards and things like that here in Darebin?
It's a great question. I think that'll be determined by the officers together with the other organisations. There'll be that if they are called into action, and that will be something that will be determined by officers and council, I suppose. Yep. Without putting any prescription on it. Yep.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Councillor Newton, would you like now to speak to the motion as a seconder?
Yes, thank you, Melissa. I'd like to acknowledge our Darebin Ethnic Communities Council members in the audience, Surian and Sophia. Thank you for coming and thank you for bringing this to our attention. The way that my country treats asylum seekers makes me ashamed to be Australian. These are vulnerable people fleeing war and persecution, and just when I thought we were as low as we could be on these vulnerable people, the federal government has gone lower. A snap decision to cut income and housing support for vulnerable asylum seekers in Australia is a low and cruel act. This cruel act, it relates to up to 400 people transported to Australia for medical treatment from Manus and Nauru. Cutting welfare payments to those already so marginalised is completely unacceptable. And as Councillor Greco said, they were given just 3 weeks to find work and accommodation. They only receive such a small amount of income now, it's just $300 a fortnight plus costs. And the reason that we need to be strong on this is because we're a city that recognises our diversity as our greatest strength, and we're a signatory of the Refugee Welcome Zone and Declaration. We welcome these asylum seekers and refugees to Darebin, and we commit to the relief effort to support any of the 400 asylum seekers and their families that might be in Darebin. I believe we'll reflect on this period in our history as one of great shame for our nation, and I want us as a council and a community to do everything we can to redress this cruel and unusual punishment on our fellow human beings. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Newton. Could I just, for the sake of consistency, also propose something? Do you know, can we, from the word that, make asylum seekers' entitlements are not reduced and that the 6-month visa be abolished, that point A? Or subsection A?
To demand that, yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So that we demand that, and then all of those 4 points underneath. Is that okay, Councillor Greco and Councillor Newton? Just for the sake of consistency and tidying up the motion. Okay. Thank you. Are there any further speakers? No? If not, we'll just wait till we put that up. And then so the bottom two are points 2 and 3 as well. So I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? The motion's carried. Is there any other urgent business? No. Thank you. Moving now to item 10, general business. There is none. Item 11, petitions. Are there any petitions to table? No petitions. Item 12, reports of standing committees. 12.1, audit committee.
Happy to move the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor McCarthy. And the seconder? Thank you, Councillor Greco. Councillor McCarthy?
Look, I'm not an audit committee member. Councillor Rennie is, and she's not with us this evening, so in her absence, I'm happy to move the recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Greco?
Nothing.
Okay, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? That motion is carried. Item 13, records of Assembly of Councillors. 13.1, Assemblies of Councillors held.
So moved.
Moved by Councillor McCarthy and a seconder, Councillor Williams. All those in favour? That motion is carried. Item 14, reports by Mayor and Councillors. Is there a copy that's been circulated? Yeah.
Can I propose that if they haven't been circulated, that they could be adopted at the next meeting?
Yeah. Do we want to do it now? That we do have them, we just haven't been circulated. Thanks.
I'm happy to move this because it is just adopting reports submitted by councillors.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor McCarthy and seconded by Councillor Williams. All those in favour? Motion's carried. Item 15, consideration of reports considered confidential. There are none. And that brings us to the close of the meeting. Thank you everybody for coming along to the meeting this evening.